Mirror Talk episode 16, Holding Space, Words that Regulate, Not Rescue. Welcome back to Mirror Talk, the language of the nervous system. In this episode, we step into one of the most misunderstood skills in emotional communication, holding space. There is a kind of presence that quiets the room before a single word is spoken. A presence that does not rush to fix, correct, rescue, or explain, but simply holds. When someone is in distress, the nervous system is not waiting for answers. It is waiting for safety, and safety is not delivered through solutions. It is delivered through being. The space between their pain and your panic. Most people believe that the opposite of abandonment is not abandonment, but rather helping. But the nervous system works differently. The opposite of abandonment is presence without pressure. Being with, not doing to, staying near, without trying to take over someone's internal process. You do not regulate another human by solving their pain. You regulate them by not becoming afraid of them. Across therapy, somatic psychology, trauma research, spiritual community, and ordinary human relationships, the same pattern repeats. The moment one person begins to fix, the other person's body begins to defend. Advice, solutions, logic, interruptions, all of them may be well-intentioned, but they signal to the dysregulated nervous system. You are not safe to feel what you're feeling. We need to shut this down, minimize it, move past it, or turn it into something manageable for me. That is not comfort. That is nervous system abandonment dressed as help. Holding space is the opposite. Holding space is the art of regulating without rescuing. It is the discipline of staying present without collapsing, controlling, or disappearing. It asks one central question. Can I stay with another person's discomfort without needing to erase my own? The nervous system reality behind comforting others. Every emotional exchange is first a physiological exchange. Before meaning, before sentences, before interpretation, the body is listening for tone, pace, proximity, and energetic pressure. The human nervous system, whether in a child, an adult, a stranger, or a partner, is always asking two questions beneath language. 1. Am I safe? 2. Am I alone? If the answer to both is no, the system regulates. If the answer to either becomes yes, the system activates. This is why comfort fails when it becomes instructional. You should. Comparative. Others have it worse. Reframing. Look on the bright side. Or spiritualized bypassing. Everything happens for a reason. These responses tell the nervous system, your experience is not valid here. Edit yourself. Shrink your pain so I can stay comfortable. Holding space does the opposite. It communicates non-verbally. You're safe to feel this here. I'm staying, even when nothing is fixed, even when nothing is resolved, even when the answer is not yet known. That is regulation. That is co-regulation. That is the ground from which real healing and real clarity begin. Why most people don't know how to hold space holding space is simple in theory, but difficult in practice because it requires us to tolerate what we were never allowed to feel ourselves. The person who interrupts is usually the person who cannot sit in silence. The person who fixes is usually the person who feels unsafe around vulnerability. The person who gives advice is often the one who fears being useless if they aren't performing value. Most people don't fail to hold space because they don't care. They fail because they were never held long enough to learn how. So instead of presence, we default to rescuing, fawn response disguised as care, problem solving, left brain escape route from emotional intensity, spiritual bypassing, love and light used as a shield against discomfort, emotional hijacking. I relate, let me make this about my pain, toxic positivity, just stay strong, productivity logic, what's the next step? All of these are nervous system defense strategies, not cruelty, not neglect, just unexamined inheritance, which means, like all patterned communication, holding space is a learned language. That makes it changeable, trainable, repairable. The nervous system language of holding space, NSL lens. In NSL, holding space has 3 parts. 1. Regulate your body first. You cannot co-regulate someone else from inside your own dysregulation. 2. Signal safety through tone, breath, and pacing. Not what you say, how you say it. 3. Use language that expands permission instead of directing experience. Examples. I'm here. You don't need to rush. You can say it however it feels. Take your time. I'm not going anywhere. These are not cliches. They are physiological cues. They tell the other nervous system, no demand, no threat, no pressure, and the body responds accordingly. The breath deepens, the shoulders drop, the gaze softens, the voice steadies, the parasympathetic system re-engages. That is not psychology. That is biology. The mirror linguistic hypothesis, MLH lens. MLH adds the layer of language mirroring. The idea that speech literally reflects internal state and projects that state into shared space. When someone is dysregulated, they are not just feeling panic. They are speaking in panic. Their pace, phrasing, metaphor, pronoun use, and volume reflect physiology. A regulated listener becomes a counter-mirror, not absorbing the state, but modeling another one. In practice, that looks like slower speech instead of matching urgency, grounded tone instead of forced reassurance, open questions instead of instructions. Would it help to talk it out or just be quiet together for a moment? I don't need you to make sense yet. I'm right here. This creates a linguistic buffer around the distressed nervous system. Because when someone is overwhelmed, logic fails but permission lands. Holding space is the language of permission without pressure, presence without performance, care without colonizing the other person's process. Why this episode matters now. We live in a time where most communication is either performance-based, online signaling, identity defense, debate as belonging, or avoidance-based, scrolling, ghosting, distraction, disconnecting. Both are symptoms of dysregulated nervous systems struggling to stay emotionally available in a world that never slows down. If boundary setting, episode 15, teaches us how to protect our energy, holding space teaches us how to share our energy without losing it. It is the nervous system skill that makes deep relationships possible, friendships, romantic bonds, parent-child connection, trauma repair, community building, activism, leadership, and conflict resolution. It is also the antidote to the epidemic of emotional loneliness in a world full of constant communication, but very little real presence. Where we go from here, element 1 will take us straight into the biology, what actually happens in your body and someone else's when you try to comfort them, why some forms of support regulate, while others silently activate threat. But before that, take this with you. Holding space is not about what you give. It's about what you stop taking away. Control, pressure, performance, urgency. When you remove those, the body finds its own breath again. And breath is the first language of safety. Element 1 begins with the physiology of shared distress, and why even a silent presence can regulate more than 1,000 well-intended words. Element 1, the nervous system science of holding space. Why the body feels seen before the mind feels understood. Before words ever land in the intellect, they land in the body. Long before someone evaluates what we said, their nervous system evaluates how it felt to receive it. This is the foundation of holding space, not emotional caretaking, not spiritual bypassing, not rescuing or performing kindness, but the biological act of helping another nervous system remain regulated enough to stay present with its own experience. If communication is the exchange of meaning, co-regulation is the exchange of safety. Most people assume comfort happens through reassurance, motivation, or advice. Don't worry, it'll be okay. You just need to think positively. Here's what you should do. But the body does not experience any of these statements as comfort. In fact, when someone is dysregulated, these well-intended responses increase threat because they shift attention away from what the person is feeling and to what they should be doing, thinking, fixing, or hiding. The nervous system here is not care, but pressure. Polyvagal theory makes the sequence clear. 1. State is assessed first. Am I safe or not? Meaning is interpreted second. What do these words mean? 3. Belief forms last. Do I accept or resist what I'm being told? This means no amount of correct information can soothe a dysregulated system. Logic cannot override a body in a survival state. That is why arguments escalate, why advice feels invalidating, and why people in distress often say, "You're not listening," even when we are responding with answers. Holding space begins by honoring the order of human processing. Regulate first, relate second, and respond third. Most people try to rescue in reverse. Respond first, convince second, and regulate never. Co-regulation versus consolation co-regulation is not cheering someone up. It is the nervous system equivalent of saying, "I'm not trying to take over your experience. I'm just here while you go through it." Consolation tries to move the person. Co-regulation tries to stay with the person. Consolation inserts content. "You're strong. You'll get through this." Co-regulation anchors tone, breath, and presence. "I'm with you. Take your time." One says, "Feel something different." The other says, "You don't have to feel it alone." And when the body does not feel alone, it can tolerate what felt previously unbearable. This is why someone crying in private may spiral into panic, but when someone sits beside them and breathes more slowly, their body begins matching the calmer rhythm without a single word being exchanged. Safety is contagious, but so is threat. Why advice raises threat instead of reducing it. When someone is overwhelmed, their prefrontal cortex, the region responsible for reasoning, planning, perspective taking, and language integration, is partially offline. What is dominant instead is the limbic autonomic loop. What does this mean for my safety? So when we say, "You just need to calm down," what if you looked at it differently? Don't stress, it's not a big deal. The body hears, "You're wrong to feel what you feel. Control your response, or I'll disconnect." The burden is now on you to change. Even the gentlest advice can feel like failure or abandonment if the system is already flooded. This is why helpful language so often backfires. It assumes the person is cognitively available to receive it. Most of the time, they're not. They do not need guidance yet. They need grounding. Holding space is not withholding wisdom. It is timing wisdom to a regulated moment. The 3 nervous system positions in distress. When someone is emotionally overwhelmed, they are rarely just upset. They are in a specific physiological state, and each state requires a different form of support. The 3 most common states are fight, flight, fawn, and freeze, and each of them expresses a different internal story about safety. When the person is in a fight or flight state, their body is charged with adrenaline, urgency, restlessness, or emotional intensity. They may speak quickly, pace, argue, spiral in thought, or insist that something must change right now. In this state, problem solving or advice only fuels the urgency. The body interprets it as more stimulation. What actually helps is slowing physiology, softer tone, slower breathing, reduced sensory input, and anchoring phrases such as, "It's okay to pause, nothing needs to be decided yet." When the person is fawning, they abandon their own needs to preserve a connection. They minimize their feelings, apologize for existing, agree too quickly, or insist, "I'm fine," while clearly not fine. This is not passivity. It is self-erasure for the sake of safety. What helps here is permission to matter, instead of reassurance. "You're doing great." The body needs validation. "You don't have to hold this together for my sake. You get to feel what you feel." When the person is in a freeze or shutdown state, they may go silent, numb, dissociated, or unreachable. There is no language because the nervous system has gone into conservation mode. The worst thing to do here is demand conversation, clarity, or emotional performance. What helps is warm presence without pressure, a soft voice, gentle pacing, no demands, no forced eye contact, phrases like, I'm here. You don't need to talk until you're ready. Each of these states responds to a different medicine. Fight-flight needs slowing, fawn needs permission, freeze needs warmth without expectation. When we hold space effectively, we are not reacting to behavior, we are responding to the body beneath it. Language that regulates versus language that rescues. You'll get through this, may be true, but it moves the emotional spotlight away. I'm here. You don't have to rush, keeps the spotlight with the person, not on yourself as the fixer. You're stronger than you think sounds supportive, but it assumes strength is the correct state. This is hard, and you don't have to pretend otherwise, returns dignity. Every regulating sentence has 3 features. 1. Pace, slower than the other person's emotional rhythm. 2. Ownership, no directives, only shared presence. I'm here with you. 3. Permission, it validates the state instead of trying to change it. Regulation is never, I know how to fix you. Regulation is always, you get to feel this, and I'm not leaving. Why tone matters more than content. MLH, Mirror Linguistic Hypothesis, proposes that language shapes regulation not only because of meaning, but because the nervous system mirrors the state embedded in the words. A fast, sharp, corrective tone transmits urgency, even if the message is kind. A soft-paced tone transmits safety, even if the message acknowledges pain. NSL, nervous system language, reframes speech as physiological signaling. Pace equals a safety cue. Volume equals threat or invitation. Breath gaps equals permission for processing. And first-person ownership then removes pressure to perform. Holding space uses language as co-regulation, not control. A real-world anchor. In-person versus online in-person. Eye contact, breath rhythm, and tone do 80% of the work. Silence can be supportive because presence is still felt. Online, words carry all the regulatory weight. People feel abandoned faster because co-regulation cues are missing. Tone must be built into sentence shape, line breaks, gentle pacing, and non-judgmental phrasing. Example of a dysregulating message online. Calm down, you're overreacting. You're taking it too personally. Example of a regulating message online. I'm here, take the time you need. You don't have to respond quickly. When the body cannot see safety, language must sound like safety. Reflection prompt. When someone shares discomfort or distress with me, do I respond in a way that reduces their intensity, or in a way that tries to redirect or repair it? Holding space begins by noticing whether we are trying to change the person, or simply keep them company while they change from within. If element 1 explains why the body is the first recipient of care, element 2 explores how language either protects or pressures that body. Element 2, the linguistics of comfort, words that regulate, not rescue. We often assume that comfort is something we say to someone, a sentence, a reassurance, a reminder, a solution. But the nervous system doesn't experience comfort through logic. It experiences comfort through felt safety, and language is only regulating when it carries safety, not when it carries answers. In other words, most people are not asking to be fixed. They are asking not to feel alone in their pain. That means the modern idea of comfort, reassurance, uplifting statements, positive reframes, and pep talks is neurologically backwards. Instead of reducing distress, it often heightens it. Not because the words are unkind, but because the body of the distressed person is not in a state capable of receiving them. The timing is wrong, the tone is wrong, the rhythm is wrong, and the intention, though good, is misdirected. This is the central distinction of this element. Comfort offered to stop our own discomfort will always dysregulate the other person. Comfort offered to share regulation gives the other person back their breath, not our beliefs. This is the foundation of NSL, nervous system language, applied to emotional support, and one of the most misunderstood parts of human communication. Support becomes unsafe when it tries to override someone's state instead of meeting it. Before we learn what works, we must learn the 4 dominant ways comfort fails, not as a moral flaw, but as a physiological mismatch. Why most comfort language escalates threat instead of easing it. When someone is distressed, their nervous system is not scanning for clarity, hope, or meaning. It is scanning for whether they are safe, alone, or in danger. The body wants presence first, clarity second. Until safety is restored, logic is experienced as intrusion, even when the logic is positive. This is why the most common supportive reactions, you'll get through this, try not to worry, everything happens for a reason, look on the bright side, so often fail. They are cognitively correct but physiologically premature. They signal resolution before there is regulation. Neuroscience makes this clear. When someone is in sympathetic activation, panic, urgency, overwhelm, attempting to reframe their state activates more adrenaline. When someone is in dorsal shutdown, numbness, collapse, silence, attempting to motivate them registers as pressure and threat. When someone is in mixed fawn freeze, people pleasing while dissociated, reassurance sounds like a requirement to perform relief they do not feel. So the real question becomes, is my response giving the other nervous system more space, or does it force them to regulate for my comfort? That is the heart of nervous system safe language. We are not asking, did I say the right thing? We are asking, did their body breathe more easily after I spoke? The 4 dysregulating forms of comfort language. These 4 categories appear across trauma literature, counseling breakdowns, exit cult testimonials, grief studies, conflict therapy, and everyday relationships. They are universal because they are instinctive reactions to discomfort, not intentional acts of care. 1. Fixing language, the silent message. This shouldn't be happening, so I need to make it stop. The spoken form. Here's what you should do. Have you tried? It'll be fine once. Fixing language assumes the problem is the feeling, not the aloneness inside the feeling. It immediately shifts the interaction from connection to performance. The distressed person must now receive the advice, respond to the advice, justify why the advice won't work, or pretend that the advice helped. The nervous system hears, I need you to get better so I can feel less helpless. 2. Bypassing language, the silent message. Your pain is too heavy, so I will replace it with something lighter. The spoken form. Everything happens for a reason. Focus on the positives. You're strong, you'll get through it. Emotionally, this creates a dissociative split. Instead of joining the person where they are, we invite them into a state they can't reach. This deepens aloneness, because now they must either defend their pain or pretend to be soothed. The nervous system hears, my real feelings are inappropriate or inconvenient. 3. Reframing language. The silent message. I need to correct your interpretation because it's making me uncomfortable. The spoken form. It's not as bad as you think. Maybe they didn't mean it that way. Try to see it differently. This is not always wrong, but when used too early, it invalidates the biology of the moment. Reframing before regulation is like asking someone to swim before they've reached the shore. The nervous system hears, my perception cannot be trusted. The silent message, your pain reminds me of mine and now I need to talk about it. The spoken form, that happened to me too. I know exactly how you feel. When I went through something similar. This often comes from empathy, but moves the center of gravity away from the person who is actively dysregulated. The emotional field shifts, and the original speaker becomes the comforter. The nervous system hears, even here, I have to disappear to keep the connection. What all four have in common, they sound supportive, but they restore the speaker's comfort, not the listener's safety. This is why people walk away from conversations thinking, I know they meant well, but I feel worse. I feel like I have to pretend I'm okay now. I wish I hadn't opened up. That sentence, I wish I hadn't opened up, is the clearest sign of dysregulating comfort. It is the moment where the body learns. It is safer to suffer silently than to seek support. Every nervous system-safe communication practice exists to reverse that learning. How we speak is the real support nervous system language reframes comfort as a co-regulatory act, not a verbal act. Mirror linguistic hypothesis reframes language as identity shaping, not fact sharing. Put simply, NSL asks, does my tone regulate or activate the person in front of me? MLH asks, whose internal script is shaping the sentence I just spoke? Support language becomes regulating when pace is slower than the distress level, tone is low, grounded, and without emotional tension. Statements are descriptive, not corrective. Sentences do not require the distressed person to change state. Belonging is communicated without agenda, and the speaker takes ownership. I'm here. I'm listening. I won't rush you. This is why the most regulating sentence in the nervous system playbook is not, you're going to be okay. It is, I'm not going anywhere. I can be with you while it hurts. One offers prediction. One offers presence. Only one reduces physiological threat. The architecture of regulating language. Before a word is spoken, the body is speaking first. The nervous system listens for prosody, tone plus rhythm of voice, breath, paced, shallow, rushed, held, facial expression, soft eyes versus scanning eyes, posture, forward urgency versus grounded stillness, gaze direction, attentive versus assessing. Every sentence is either I'm here with you or I need you to change. That is why the architecture of regulating language follows this sequence. 1. Witness. I see what you're feeling. 2. Regulate. I'm not rushing you away from it. 3. Reflect. You don't have to fix anything for me to stay present. This is the opposite of most scripted comforting phrases. Not a single word of this architecture tries to motivate, to improve, to persuade, to reframe, to guide, to uplift, or to fix. Instead, it builds the nervous system floor upon which clarity and choice later become possible. This is what co-regulation really is. I will lend you my safety until your body remembers its own. Life scenario example scenario A, in person A. I feel like I'm falling apart. Nothing is making sense anymore. Common response, dysregulating. You're not falling apart, you're just overwhelmed. You've gotten through worse than this. NSL breakdown, tone fast, reassuring, upward inflection means urgency. Body command. Stop feeling this way. Nervous system impact. Adds pressure to recover. Regulating response. I hear how hard this feels. Take your time. We don't have to fix anything right now. I'm here. NSL breakdown. Pace slows system. Ownership removes pressure. No emotional demand for improvement. Belonging stabilizes state scenario B. Digital text or DM. Person A. I can't handle this anymore. I feel like I'm drowning. Common response. Dysregulating. You're stronger than this. Don't let it get to you. You just need to keep going. Regulating response. I'm here. You don't have to hold this alone. I'm listening. You can tell me what it feels like. Note, in digital spaces, tone is replaced by pacing and spacing. Short, spacious messages are safer than long blocks of emotional intensity. If the first half of this element mapped why comfort fails, this half shows how it can succeed, not through emotional intelligence as a concept, but through applied nervous system literacy. The core shift is, comfort is not something you give someone. Comfort is something you hold with someone. This reframes supportive communication from intervention to co-regulation. The goal is not to remove someone from their emotional state, but to remove the aloneness inside that state. How to speak without stealing agency. The single most regulating feature of support language is not tone, empathy, validation, or good intention. It is the preservation of the other person's autonomy, especially when they feel powerless. Every nervous system safe sentence contains one or more of these principles. You are not required to feel differently for me to stay connected. You still have choice, even if you don't feel it right now. I'm not here to edit your experience. Your emotion does not threaten our relationship. You do not have to protect me from your pain. These translate into linguistic patterns like, I'm here with you. You don't need to respond quickly. You can feel this at your own pace. I don't need you to make sense yet. I'm just listening. You don't have to be better for me to stay. Notice the shape of these sentences. They do not demand emotional change. They keep ownership with the speaker. I'm here. They do not assume the role of rescuer. They remove pressure instead of adding perspective. For a dysregulated nervous system, this is not just kind language. It is a physiological permission slip. Why you'll be okay is not the same as I'm here with you. Let's examine the difference through NSL tone and MLH linguistic structure. You'll be okay. Predictive, not relational, assumes future safety without present validation, requires belief instead of offering support, places emotional responsibility back on the distressed person. I'm here with you. Present tense, which regulates the body, removes pressure to get better, signals connection, not expectation, and allows emotion to exist without condition. The nervous system knows the difference instantly. You'll be okay says, you need to change state. I'm here says, you don't have to change state to stay connected. That is the entire architecture of safety in one sentence. Conversions. Dysregulating versus regulating language. Many of the phrases people offer in moments of distress are intended as comfort, but are received instead as pressure, dismissal, or emotional reduction. For example, when someone says, don't cry, the surface intention is to soothe, but the deeper message the nervous system hears is, your emotional expression is inconvenient, and I need you to regulate yourself so I don't feel uncomfortable. A regulating alternative would sound more like, you can cry, I'm here with you. Notice the difference. One requests emotional control, the other communicates continued presence. The same pattern appears in the phrase, you're strong, you've got this. It sounds encouraging, but it actually demands resilience at a moment when the person may not have any capacity left. A regulating counterpart would be, you don't have to be strong right now, I'm not going anywhere. Instead of assigning a role, be strong. It removes the pressure to perform strength and makes space for vulnerability. Look on the bright side, and it could be worse, are both classic examples of emotional bypassing disguised as optimism. These phrases imply that the person's current emotional experience is invalid or disproportionate. A regulating alternative would be something like, this feels heavy, I'm here while you feel it. The first pulls the person away from their own state. The second joins them inside it. Another common pressure phrase is, try not to think about it, which assumes that mental distraction can override nervous system activation. A regulating response acknowledges the internal load instead of attempting to shut it down. You don't have to hold this alone. I'm listening. Likewise, spiritualized dismissals like everything happens for a reason, or motivational bypasses such as you just need to stay positive, force meaning or mindset instead of offering presence. The regulating alternative is simple and more honest. You don't need a reason for this to hurt, or I'm not here to change what you feel, just to stay with you in it. What all these regulating phrases have in common is not linguistic cleverness, but the removal of the requirement. None of them tells the other person how to feel, what to fix, who to be, or how quickly to move on. They share one nervous system message. You are not alone, and nothing is demanded of you for me to stay. That is the difference between comfort that regulates and comfort that rescues. 1. Holding space without language. Many people think they fail at comforting because they cannot find the right words. But the greatest skill in emotional support is not expressive, but perceptive. In polyvagal terms, the body registers presence, tone, and rhythm before semantic meaning. A silent, grounded presence often regulates faster than verbal reassurance. In other words, you don't have to fill the silence. The silence is often where regulation happens. 2. Speaking without inserting yourself. This is where most well-meaning support becomes covertly dysregulating. Examples of accidental self-centering. I felt the same way once. You know what helped me? I can't bear to see you like this. The first shifts attention away. The second turns the moment into advice. The third makes the distressed person responsible for your emotional state. The regulating revision is simple. I won't make this about me. I'm here to understand, not to fix. You don't need to protect me from what you're feeling. This is how speech becomes holding, not redirecting. Why advice increases threat when safety isn't established. Modern culture treats emotional discomfort as a problem to be solved instead of an experience to be witnessed. But the nervous system is not soothed by solutions. It is soothed by co-regulation first, clarity second. Research on emotional regulation confirms the brain cannot process new information while in threat mode. Advice given during dysregulation increases cortisol and accelerates shutdown. Feeling understood precedes being able to accept guidance. This is why the most supportive conversations follow a three-stage sequence. 1. Attune to the body first. 2. Acknowledge the emotion without steering it. 3. offer support only after the nervous system softens. Skipping straight to step 3 means you are interacting with the mind of the person while their nervous system is still in survival mode, which means they cannot receive you. This is why many people walk away from support, feeling more alone than before they asked for help. Reflection prompt: ask yourself, do I comfort to reduce their distress or to reduce my discomfort in witnessing it? The tone question reveals whether support is authentic or performative. When language removes pressure, the body begins to settle, and once safety returns, something else comes into view. Why so many people struggle to say no, to hold boundaries, or to refuse emotional labor without guilt. The inability to stay present with another person's emotion is one side of the pattern. The inability to stay present with our own discomfort while expressing a limit is the other. And that leads us to the next layer in this nervous system architecture, not how we comfort others, but why so many of us learned that our own boundaries are dangerous. Element 3, trauma, tension, and the urge to rescue. There is a moment, almost invisible, almost instantaneous, when the body feels another person's distress and moves to fix it before the mind has even named what is happening. The impulse to soothe, solve, reframe, redirect, or rescue appears not as a conscious decision, but as a reflex. For many people, helping is not a choice. It is a nervous system strategy for survival. This is the psychological and physiological root of what appears on the surface as kindness, caretaking, advice-giving, emotional labor, or being the strong one. What looks like compassion can, in many cases, be an old trauma pattern in disguise, one that keeps both people dysregulated, dependent, and disconnected from true agency. The rescuer reflex as a nervous system strategy. When the nervous system detects threat, not just physical danger, but social rupture, emotional tension, or relational instability, it will choose the most familiar survival pathway. For some, that pathway is fight, for others, flight. But for a large number of people raised in unstable emotional environments, the dominant survival response becomes fawning, appeasing, fixing, smoothing, softening, or absorbing discomfort to prevent explosion, abandonment, or shame. The rescuer reflex is simply fawning intellectualized into empathy. It looks caring, it sounds generous. It is even often praised as maturity, emotional intelligence, or selflessness, but it is actually a body trying to prevent the return of chaos. Rescuing is often not about the other person at all, but about managing the intensity of one's own internal discomfort when witnessing distress. This is why some people rush to do, explain, advise, reframe, or fix, even when the other person never asked for help. Their nervous system is not responding to the present situation, but to a historical imprint. If I don't stabilize this, something bad will happen. When helping is really self-soothing, there is a specific moment, often missed, where the urge to rescue shifts from support to self-regulation. The internal sequence looks like this. 1. I feel your pain. Mirror neuron activation. 2. Your pain activates my unresolved pain. 3. My body becomes tense, anxious, or overloaded. 4. I need you to stop feeling this so that I can feel safe again. 5. I call that need helping. This means the person who is suffering ends up emotionally carrying two nervous systems, their own, and the one trying to help them. This is why some people experience comfort as pressure, why I'm just trying to help is received as suffocation, why emotional support can feel like emotional extraction. The unspoken dynamic becomes, I need you to stop hurting so I don't have to feel what comes up in me when you hurt. That is not compassion. That is self-regulation outsourced to someone in pain. The childhood origin of the rescuer identity. The rescuer pattern is rarely born in adulthood. It is shaped in childhood environments where emotional needs were punished, shamed, or ignored. The child was praised for being low maintenance, mature, or helpful. Stability depended on tracking other people's moods. Love was earned through emotional compliance. Caregiving was required for safety or belonging. Being needed was the only route to being valued. The child learns, if I stay attuned to everyone else, I stay safe. If I'm not a burden, I won't be abandoned. If I help them feel better, they won't become dangerous. In adulthood, this becomes, if I don't fix this, I will lose connection. If I don't help, I'll feel guilty. If I don't hold everything together, things will fall apart, and it will be my fault. The rescuer reflex is not born from generosity. It is born from early emotional responsibility without early emotional protection. When helping becomes identity, once rescuing becomes a stabilizing strategy, it also becomes a self-concept. I am the strong one. I am the one people come to. I can handle things others can't. If I don't hold it together, no one will. And beneath those statements, I don't know who I am if I'm not helping. I don't know how to receive care. I don't trust anyone else to handle pain safely. I don't feel worth anything unless I'm useful. People who carry this identity often report struggling to rest without feeling guilty, feeling uncomfortable when others cry or express anger, being unable to say, I don't know how to help, a lifetime of being the therapist friend, resenting the emotional weight they carry, but being terrified of putting it down. Never experience deep support because they unconsciously block or deflect it. This is not altruism. This is survival dressed as virtue. When helping is actually emotional control, true support creates expansion. Rescuing creates dependency. One of the most confronting realities is that rescuing often functions as a way to stay in control of the relationship. If the other person always needs you, they cannot leave you. If you are the one with answers, you can avoid vulnerability. If you stay in the helper role, you never have to reveal your own needs. The person being helped becomes the emotional substrate the rescuer stands on, and the price is high. The rescuer never learns how to feel safe while not being useful. The hidden grief of the rescuer. Many rescuers eventually reach a breaking point of quiet resentment. I'm always there for everyone. No one is ever there for me. Why do people unload on me but disappear when I need support? I'm exhausted from being needed, but I don't know how to stop. This grief is complicated by shame. I should be able to do this. I'm supposed to be the strong one. If I stop helping, who am I? The grief is not just about the labor they carry, but about the life they never got to live, a life where their worth was not measured by emotional performance. Reflection prompt: ask yourself, when I rush to help, am I easing their pain or escaping my own helplessness? If rescuing is not always compassion, and helping is not always presence, the question becomes, what does real support look like? The kind that regulates rather than rescues. That is where we pick up in the second part of this element, where we explore how nervous system safe support works, how agency can be protected, and why true holding space requires tolerating another's pain instead of managing it. The rescue reflex does not activate because a person is overly kind. It activates because the nervous system cannot tolerate another person's dysregulation. What looks like compassion is often an unconscious attempt to extinguish discomfort in ourselves, not regulate distress in the other. In trauma psychology, this is called self-soothing through other control, the illusion that if I fix their problem, my body will calm down. What the mind frames as care, the body frames as survival. This is why people who have spent years as the emotional caretaker, the mediator, the pleaser, the strong friend, the one who absorbs everyone else's pain, often report exhaustion, suppressed resentment, and an invisible longing to be held the way they hold others. They did not practice compassion. They performed safety measures for the room because no one ever protected there. The nervous system logic of the rescuer. When a child grows up in an environment where conflict, distress, sadness, or anger are unsafe, meaning punished, ignored, mocked, or turned into a crisis, the body learns a rapid appeasement strategy. If I can make the tension go away quickly, I won't be hurt, abandoned, or blamed. In adulthood, this reflex survives long after the danger is gone. Someone cries, panics, or becomes overwhelmed, and the body of the former caretaker reacts faster than thought. How do I fix this? What do I say to make it stop? What solution can I offer? How do I cheer them up? What do I need to do so I can breathe again? It is not a moral failure, it is a state-conditioned response. In polyvagal terms, the rescuer is not regulated. They are in a controlled sympathetic activation dressed as empathy. Their tone speeds up, their speech fills space, their advice arrives like a weaponized hug. This is why many people who consider themselves good at helping others are secretly terrified of silence, conflict, grief, or raw emotion. Silence is not empty for them, it is the sound of danger returning. The hidden emotion under the rescuer reflex, contrary to how it appears, rescuing is rarely fueled by love. It is fueled by fear of powerlessness, fear of being useless, fear of being rejected for not performing value, fear of being blamed for not fixing things, fear of being seen as selfish, and fear of being pulled back into an unbearable childhood helplessness. Many people discover this only when they finally stop rescuing and notice what shows up in their body: anxiety, guilt, shame, panic, or the sudden feeling that they are a bad person just for letting someone else feel their feelings. That is not empathy, it is conditioning. Someone who was allowed to have needs growing up can sit beside distress without collapsing into guilt or control. Someone who was rewarded for meeting everyone else's needs will feel unsafe the moment they stop. When support becomes control, a key distinction. Help given to reduce the other person's suffering equals support. Help given to reduce one's own internal discomfort is control. Even when the words sound identical, the nervous system reveals the truth. A regulated, attuned presence feels slow, spacious, and non-intrusive. I'm here with you. You don't have to rush. Take your time. A rescuing presence feels urgent, tightening, and directional. Here's what you should do. It's going to be fine. Don't think like that. Try this instead. One removes fear, the other removes freedom. This is why many people in distress go quiet, shut down, or say never mind when someone jumps to advice. Their nervous system registers rescue as intrusion and invasion disguised as care. Real-world example: a friend breaks down after losing their job. Person A responds immediately. You'll get something else, don't worry. Just apply here, update your CV, and stay positive. You're strong, it's not that bad. Person B responds differently. That sounds heavy. I'm here. Do you want silence, talking, or just company right now? Both believe they are helping, but only one gives agency back to the person in pain. Person A fills the space because they cannot bear the discomfort. Person B makes room because they can tolerate the truth. The difference is not language, it is regulation. Why rescuers burn out chronically over-responsible people eventually reach a breaking point. Not because they stop caring, but because the nervous system was never designed to function as the emotional regulator for multiple adults. The body keeps score. Migraines and jaw tension, chronic fatigue masked as empathy, resentment disguised as loyalty, identity that dissolves when no one needs you, grief for a belonging that was never mutual. Burnout is not a lack of compassion. It is the invoice for unbounded compassion. The urge to rescue is not a personality trait. It is a trauma-coded strategy to avoid abandonment, conflict, or shame. And the moment a person realizes this, a new form of freedom appears. I can still care without carrying. That is the doorway to the next element. Element 3 has named the wound beneath the rescuer instinct, the way urgency, fixing, and emotional overfunctioning are not signs of strength, but but signs of unresolved nervous system fear. Not rescuing, but staying with. Not fixing the feeling, but making space for it. Not protecting the person from pain, but protecting their right to move through it without being managed. Element 4. Psychological insight. The art of staying with why presence is more regulating than advice, and how to hold space without absorbing the emotion or abandoning yourself. Presence as relational repair, not performance. There is a kind of presence that regulates the nervous system before a single word is spoken. It is not loud, it is not impressive. It does not rush to fill silence with reassurance or analysis. It offers something far more biologically fundamental than comfort, coherence. To hold space in the nervous system sense is not to fix, interpret, or rescue. It is to sit inside a moment without abandoning oneself or the other person. It is relational regulation instead of emotional management. And yet, very few people ever learn how to do this, not because they lack compassion, but because they were never given models of safety that weren't built on control, performance, or problem solving. Across families, friendships, workplaces, and even therapeutic spaces, the dominant expectation is that caring must do something. It must change the feeling, resolve the pain, reverse the discomfort, produce insight, or provide an answer. The unspoken belief is, if I don't fix it, I'm failing them. But this assumption has nothing to do with the emotional needs of the distressed person. It reflects something else entirely: the helper's internal discomfort with powerlessness, ambiguity, and open effect. This is why so many attempts at comfort do the opposite of what was intended. Instead of soothing, they minimize. Instead of attuning, they override. Instead of connecting, they interrupt the nervous system's attempt to process. A person in emotional overwhelm is not asking for a solution. They are asking not to be left alone inside the experience. And if someone cannot sit in that space with them, without reframing it, spiritualizing it, rushing it, or absorbing it, then the person becomes emotionally alone, even in the presence of another human being. That loneliness, more than the original pain, is what creates lifelong distrust around intimacy. When silence is safety, and when silence feels like abandonment. One of the most common misunderstandings about holding space is the idea that silence equals neutrality. It doesn't. Silence is interpreted based on attachment history and nervous system state. For a regulated nervous system, silence can feel spacious, respectful, and grounding. For a dysregulated nervous system, silence can feel like withdrawal, judgment, or rejection. For someone with an abandonment history, silence can feel like proof that their feelings are too much. So when people say, just sit with them, don't talk, the instruction is incomplete. Silence isn't therapeutic on its own. What makes silence safe is presence, not absence. Presence is communicated through microsignals: eye contact that doesn't scan for escape routes, breathing that stays slow and visible, posture that isn't leaning away, and a tone of voice that says, you don't have to change for me to stay here. Holding space is not the lack of words. It is the lack of interference. Why people panic when they can't fix the situation. Many people experience a kind of internal alarm when faced with another person's pain. They can feel an immediate urge to offer advice, change subject, look on the bright side, tell a personal story, give spiritual meaning to the suffering, and to rush into reassurance. It'll be okay. Are strong. Don't worry. These are not signs of coldness. They are signs of learned pressure. People who grow up in environments where emotions were either punished, ignored, or managed often internalize the belief that their value is in the function they perform, not the presence they bring. If they cannot stop someone else's suffering, they feel useless, unsafe, or ashamed. In that state, they are not comforting the other person. They are trying to regulate their own nervous system by shutting down the emotional signal coming from the other body. This is the rescuer reflex, not compassion, but an unconscious survival strategy. Presence versus management. The nervous system difference. When someone is in distress, there are two very different ways a responder can show up, and the body can feel the difference immediately, long before the mind interprets meaning. One response is management, the instinct to fix, resolve, correct, or hurry someone out of their pain. The other is presence, the ability to stay with them while they feel what they feel without trying to control the outcome. Management sounds like, let me fix this. Here's what you should do. Don't feel like that. It's not that bad. The speech gets faster, the breath gets shallower, and the helper often shifts into problem-solving mode. What looks like care is often the nervous system of the helper trying to escape discomfort. The result? The moment becomes about resolution, not connection. The focus silently moves away from the distressed person's inner experience and onto the helper's need for things to feel better, quickly. Presence, in contrast, sounds like, I'm here with you while it's hard. Take your time. You don't have to rush through this, or sometimes nothing at all, just silence that doesn't abandon. The tone lowers, the breath deepens, and speech slows. Instead of pushing for change, presence makes space for feeling. It does not demand movement. It restores the person's right to remain exactly as they are, without having to defend the legitimacy of their emotional state. The effects are radically different at the level of the nervous system. When the body feels pressure, even pressure wrapped in kindness, it activates defense. The sympathetic system prepares to guard, explain, perform, justify, or escape. Or if escape feels impossible, the dorsal system collapses into numbness or polite shutdown. The I'm fine mask that appears when someone realizes their real feelings are unwelcome. In both cases, the emotional energy is not processed, it is suppressed. But when the body feels attuned presence, genuinely felt safety that does not rush or correct, the emotional load becomes metabolizable. The person does not have to fight their experience, nor abandon it. They can feel without being alone inside the feeling. This is the foundation of co-regulation, not advice, not solutions, but shared capacity. It is the difference between someone trying to control your experience and someone helping you stay with it long enough for it to complete itself. Doesn't rescue. Presence doesn't perform. Presence reminds the nervous system, you're not alone. You don't have to defend yourself to be held. That is the moment where healing begins, not with insight, but with safety, the attachment lens. Why some people cannot sit in difficult emotion attachment theory doesn't just explain childhood. It explains the adult nervous system in relationships. There are predictable reasons why some people can remain open in another person's pain, and others shut down or take over. Anxious attachment, rescuer reflex. If I fix it, I won't be rejected. Avoidant attachment, shutdown reflex. If I get close, I'll be consumed. Disorganized attachment, alternating between the two, secure attachment. Capacity for presence without merging or withdrawing, holding space is not a skill of the intellect. It is a felt sense of internal safety that makes external safety possible. If a person has never been held, they will struggle to hold others. If a person were only loved for usefulness, they would confuse value with function. If a person has never been safe in emotional intensity, they will instinctively try to control it. That is why the work of holding space always begins with nervous system awareness, not communication technique. The first truth of holding space. You cannot offer co-regulation if you are in self-regulation panic. Empathy does not require emotional fusion. Support does not require solving. Connection does not require comfort. Presence does not require answers. And this is the fundamental shift of element 4. To hold space is not to change the emotion. To hold space is to change the conditions in which the emotion is felt. What people need is not relief from feeling, but relief from feeling alone inside the feeling. If the first part of this element explained why holding space matters on a nervous system level, the second half of the element focuses on how the body actually communicates safety without taking control, and why the difference between witnessing and managing is the difference between healing and emotional erasure. The emotional oxygen of being witnessed. When someone is in distress, the nervous system evaluates one question before anything else. Am I safe while feeling this? If the answer is yes, the body begins processing the emotion instead of defending against it. If the answer is no, the emotion becomes stuck, frozen in the body as tension, shutdown, or looping self-analysis. This is why people can cry alone for an hour and feel worse, but cry in the presence of one attuned person and feel the emotion move, release, soften, shift. Nothing was solved. Nothing was reframed. Nothing was fixed. What changed was the state from emotional isolation to co-regulated connection. Emotions are not healed by insight. They are healed by safe witnessing. Why being with heals more than doing for? Most people believe support is measured by action. What did I say? What advice did I give? Did I offer solutions? Did I help them calm down? But the nervous system does not register words first. It registers signals. Posture, tone, pace, breath, eye contact, micro-expressions, pauses, and proximity communicate safety long before language arrives. That is why someone can say all the right phrases, but still feel dismissive, impatient, or controlling. The body hears the truth beneath the sentence. You cannot say safety. You can only signal it. And if the signal says, I need you to calm down so I feel better, then the other person's body will instinctively guard itself, no matter how warm the words sound. How to hold space without absorbing, fixing, or freezing. The fear many people have is, if I don't fix it, I'll drown in it. This fear appears in two dysfunctional forms. 1. Emotional merging, absorbing, your pain is now my pain. 2. Emotional management, controlling, your pain needs to stop so I can stay comfortable. But there is a third position that most people were never taught. Emotional containment, your pain is yours, I am here with you, and I don't have to become it to stay present. This is the adult nervous system capacity that most childhoods did not model, because most adults themselves were never shown it. Holding space does not mean collapsing into empathy. It means being available without disappearing. It means caring without rescuing. It means feeling with, not feeling for. It means letting the other person stay the subject of their own experience. NSL application, safety signals without speech from the lens of nervous system language. NSL, the body sends 3 core safety messages before words are even used. Breath, slow, visible, chest relaxed leads to signals. We are not in danger. Tone, lower pitch, softer resonance leads to signals. I'm not trying to overpower you. Gaze steady but not intrusive leads to signals. I'm present, not analyzing. If any of these are replaced with urgency, fast breath, sharpness, tight tone, or scanning, avoidant eyes, the body reads the interaction as threat, not support. Holding space is not a technique. It is a state transmitted through physiology. The 3 survival responses of the helper. Most people think only the distressed person is dysregulated, but the helper is just as likely to go into a survival pattern. Fight, fixing mode. I'll solve it right now. Here's what you need to do. Look strong. Sounds confident. Underneath, fear of helplessness. Flight, avoidance mode. It'll be fine. Don't dwell on it. Stay positive. Looks kind. Sounds soothing. Underneath, fear of emotional intensity. Fawn, over comfort mode. You're not wrong, everyone else is. You're perfect. They're awful. Looks loyal. Sounds supportive. Underneath, fear of losing belonging. These are not emotional skills. They are nervous system escape routes. The person appears to be helping, but is actually trying to escape their own internal discomfort. When support is driven by anxiety, not attunement, the body on the receiving end can feel it immediately. What people actually need when they are overwhelmed, contrary to cultural belief, emotional overwhelm does not require a lesson, a reframe, a solution, a spiritual meaning, a correction, a distraction, a silver lining. What the nervous system requires first is containment. This is allowed to exist. Attunement. I'm here and I'm not leaving. Permission. You don't have to perform. You don't have to get it together for me. Regulation through presence. I can stay steady while you feel what you feel. This is what creates emotional safety, not being saved, but being accompanied. The core question of element 4. Can I stay with this feeling, mine or theirs, without rushing to change it? If the answer is no, the next step is not technique, but awareness. What part of me feels unsafe right now? Whose emotions was I trained to manage in childhood? What meaning do I attach to being unable to fix someone's pain? When did I learn that presence wasn't enough? Self-awareness turns compulsion into choice. And choice, not emotional fusion, not intervention, is what makes holding space ethical. Reflection prompt. Ask yourself, how long can I remain emotionally present before the urge to fix, translate, rescue, or spiritually bypass activates in me? Observe not the thoughts, but the body shift, breath tightening, heat rising, jaw bracing, eye contact breaking, shoulders lifting, words preparing. That moment is the real edge of capacity, the threshold where co-regulation can either deepen or collapse. Element 5, integration practice. The 5 levels of holding space, presence, and attunement. You've just seen why most people don't know how to stay with pain, not because they lack care, but because their nervous system confuses witnessing with responsibility. And now the real work begins, shifting from understanding why holding space is hard into learning how to do it in real time, without abandoning yourself or the other person. Because holding space is not a personality trait. It's not kindness or patience or having a good heart. It is a regulated skill, a physiological ability to remain present inside someone else's emotional weather without taking over the sky. Most of what people call support is actually one of 3 things. 1. Fixing, trying to stop the discomfort because you can't tolerate it. 2. Reframing, trying to change perception instead of first meeting emotion. 3. Hijacking, entering the space with your own feelings, stories, or lessons. None of those is evil. They're just dysregulated coping strategies wearing the costume of care. Real holding space isn't a performance of empathy. It's what happens when your nervous system stays open, even when theirs is overwhelmed. So before learning what to say, we start with what the body is already saying. Level 1. Presence, when doing nothing is everything presence, is the first level because nothing else works without it. If someone is crying in front of you and your nervous system has already gone into urgency, guilt, shutdown, or I need to fix this, then whatever words come next will not land as safety. They will land as pressure. Presence is not stillness. Presence is non-interference. It sounds like, I'm here, I'm with you, take your time. Silence, that isn't leaving. But presence isn't the words, it's the frequency behind the words. If you say, I'm here, but your breath is shallow, your eyes are scanning, and your body is leaning away, the message becomes, I want you to stop feeling this so I can relax. That is not presence. That is internal escape dressed as compassion. You know you're in true presence when you're not planning the next sentence while they're speaking. You're not narrating internally. What do I do? What should I say? You've released the belief that you must solve what you are witnessing. Presence is the quiet agreement that says, your emotion can stay as long as it needs to. I don't need to control it to feel safe. That is the first nervous system door into trust. Without it, everything else collapses into performance. Level 2. Attunement, when the body listens before the mind translates. If presence is staying, attunement is feeling with, without becoming. Most support breaks down right here, not because the words are wrong, but because they are not matched to the nervous system state of the other person. Attunement is the moment you stop assuming what they need and start reading what their body is showing you. A trembling voice does not need advice. A person frozen and numb does not need encouragement. A frantic mind does not need perspective. Presence asks, can I stay? Attunement asks, can I adjust? Attunement is when you soften your voice because theirs is raw, or you slow your breath because you've lost rhythm, or you say nothing at all because they are holding back tears, not words. Attunement is co-regulation without takeover. It sounds like, I can feel how intense this is. You don't have to explain everything right now. I'm listening, even to what you can't say yet. It is the language of nervous system permission. Why most people never reach these first 2 levels. Because they were never taught how to feel with someone without feeling responsible for them. Because childhood rewarded fixing, performing, smoothing tension, or being the strong one. Because silence was treated as failure instead of space. Because emotional presence was never modeled, only emotional management. So now in adulthood, people rush to rescue not from love, but from panic at their own powerlessness. That's why the most advanced form of support is not what you do, but what you can tolerate without doing anything yet. Holding space starts as an emotional posture. I do not need you to get better for me to stay here with you. That is the first safety some people have ever felt. An SL layer. What you don't say matters as much as what you do. Nervous system language isn't about perfect phrases. It's about removing the hidden pressure in ordinary speech. These are examples of phrases that sound caring but activate shutdown. Don't cry. signals emotional inconvenience. It's okay. Implies they shouldn't feel what they feel. You're stronger than this. Puts identity above experience, at least. Redirects them away from the present emotion. Everything happens for a reason. Forces meaning before safety. All of these are attempts to regulate the speaker, not the person in pain. NSL instead uses ownership and pacing. I'm here. Take the time you need. You don't have to make sense of it yet. You don't need to rush your way out of this. You're allowed to feel exactly what's happening. Safety before sense-making. Attunement before interpretation. Presence is the nervous system staying. Attunement is the nervous system's matching. The next level is where holding space becomes active co-regulation, where your breath, tone, and pacing become the stabilizing architecture a dysregulated system can lean into. Co-regulation signifies meaning and conscious choice, full breakdown of phrases, pacing, red flags, and scripts for different emotional states: rage, grief, panic, shame, collapse. If the first two levels of holding space focus on presence and stabilization, the remaining three involve precision. Knowing how to meet someone where they are without steering, rescuing, correcting, or collapsing into the emotion you're witnessing. These levels are about shifting from comforting with words to co-regulating with nervous system literacy, not fixing the person, but supporting the physiology that is trying to regain coherence beneath their words. Level 3, attunement. Meeting the internal temperature. Not the story. Attunement is the moment the other person realizes, you're not reacting to what I'm saying, you're responding to what I'm feeling. This is the first level where language becomes secondary and the nervous system signaling begins to do the heavy lifting. Attunement is matching pace, not mirroring emotion, naming sensations rather than analyzing content, responding to the felt experience, not the intellectual narrative, staying curious instead of assuming clarity. The mistake most people make here is trying to get it right intellectually, when the body doesn't need correctness. It needs companionship inside the unknown. The person may not fully understand what they're feeling yet. Your job isn't to decode it for them, but to stay with them while they do. Attunement sounds like, I'm not sure what it all means yet, but I can feel that this is heavy for you. A lot is moving inside you right now. I'm here while you sort through it. You don't have to explain it cleanly. You can just feel it, and I'll stay with you. What it never sounds like. I know exactly how you feel. You don't. You're probably just. Analysis is regulation bypass. Let's figure out what this really means. Premature interpretation is a form of control. Attunement is where most conversations fail, not because someone is uncaring, but because they rush to the part where the emotion becomes tidy. But emotions are not tidy by design. They are biological waves that require room before they reveal meaning. If you need the other person to stop feeling a certain way so you can relax, you are not holding space. You are trying to manage the moment. Attunement is the opposite of management. It is the art of surviving discomfort without modifying the other person to reduce your own tension. This is why attunement is the most confronting stage for rescuers, fixers, teachers, therapists, or anyone raised to earn worth through helping. Holding space requires surrendering the identity of the one who knows and becoming the one who stays. Level 4, co-regulation. Lending a nervous system without taking over the experience. Co-regulation is where the body begins to settle because it has borrowed safety from another. This is not a metaphor, it is literal physiology. The vagus nerve calms in the presence of regulated breathing, softened tone, unbroken eye contact, and unthreatening proximity. The body does not calm down because of what is said, but because it has proof that the threat has decreased. Co-regulation means you are not emotionally joining the person, but stabilizing beside them. You are not absorbing the feeling, but allowing it to exist without becoming contagious. You are not performing calmness, but actually regulating your own system so their system can entrain to it. The most powerful co-regulating act is not a sentence. It is silence with presence. Not a void of silence, but a silence that says, you are not alone in this. I'm not leaving. I'm not fixing. I'm here while it moves. This is where holding space becomes real work. Not everyone can survive the silence. Not everyone can allow a loved one to cry without rushing in with explanations. Not everyone can resist the urge to make the moment cleaner, faster, or more comfortable. Because co-regulation requires your own nervous system to be anchored first, the question before helping anyone else is always, am I regulated, or am I trying to regulate them so I don't have to feel my own discomfort? If the answer is the second, you are rescuing, not regulating. Language at this level becomes sparse and slow. I'm right here. Take your time. Nothing needs to change yet. Just breathe with me. You don't have to hold it alone. Notice, no advice, no future statements, no reframes, no stay positive, no look on the bright side. Hope is not the currency here. Presence is. Level 5, agency and choice. Returning the wheel without forcing movement. The final level of holding space is where the person remembers, I still have choice. This is where power is returned, not because you gave it, but because you never took it away. Agency is restored when the person feels three things at once. 1. I'm allowed to feel what I feel. 2. I'm not being emotionally controlled or managed. 3. I'm not being abandoned while I figure out what comes next. That combination, support without pressure, presence without intrusion, is what transforms emotional collapse into emotional clarity. Language at this level shifts from soothing to mirroring agency. What do you need right now? Space, company, or time? I can walk with you, but I won't steer unless you ask. You don't have to decide anything yet. I trust you'll know when you're ready. This is where most support becomes harm, because people mistake helping for leading. But holding space is not leadership, it is accompaniment. Agency is not given by the supporter. Agency is remembered by the person in pain. The nervous system returns to itself when it is no longer being hijacked by urgency, advice, guilt, or emotional pressure. This is why the final skill of holding space is knowing when not to speak. Not because silence is superior, but because your words should never move faster than their capacity. The 5 emotional scripts apply co-regulation, grief. You don't need to make sense of it yet. I'll stay with you while it breaks and reforms. Rage. I'm not afraid of your anger. You can move it without losing me. Shame. You don't need to shrink here. I see the whole of you, not the moment you're trapped in. Panic. Keep breathing with me. Your body thinks you're alone. I'm here to remind it you're not. Confusion. You don't need clarity yet. You just need space to feel what's underneath the noise. Each contains the same structure. Presence, not pressure, support, not steering, safety, not solution. Boundary safe holding space never requires self-erasure. If you abandon your own needs, you are not holding space. You are performing self-sacrifice. A regulated person can say, I can stay with you for a while, and when I need rest, I'll tell you, it doesn't mean I'm leaving you. I care about you deeply, and I also need a moment to ground myself so I can stay present. Boundaries protect the quality of presence, not the distance between people. Practice ritual. Letting the other person lead the pace. The next time someone opens up to you, try this. 1. Before speaking, match their breathing, even if only for 15 seconds. 2. Instead of asking a question, reflect sensation. I can feel how heavy this is for you. 3. Do not offer meaning, solutions, or reframes until they ask for them. 4. When they pause, wait, instead of filling the space. 5. Let them be the first to move towards the next steps. If they never do, that's still holding space. The nervous system doesn't heal by being moved forward. It heals when it is not pushed. When presence holds and pace follows the person, something quiet changes. The body stops bracing for correction and begins trusting the room. No rescue was performed, no lesson delivered, and yet the nervous system settles because it was not moved faster than its capacity. This is the paradox at the heart of holding space. The less you try to fix, the more repair becomes possible. Element 5 gave you the practice. Stay, attune, co-regulate, then let meaning and choice arise without pressure. What remains is the reminder that turns technique into temperament. Love does not require intervention, it asks for coherence. The boundary that keeps you intact and the presence that keeps them company are not opposites. Together, they are the conditions in which people find their footing again. We close this episode not with another method, but with a posture, a way of being that replaces performance with presence. Element 6 gathers the thread into one simple truth. You don't have to rescue people to love them. Often, the trust you refuse to spend on fixing is the trust that helps them heal. Element 6, closing whisper, the space that heals by staying where presence replaces performance. There comes a point in every relationship, parent and child, friend and friend, lover and lover, guide and seeker, where words lose their usefulness, and what remains is the test beneath every human bond. Can you stay with me without trying to change me? That question is the nervous system's litmus test for safety. Not, do you understand me? And not even, do you agree with me? But can I still exist in front of you while I'm not okay? Most of us were never taught how to answer yes, not because we lacked compassion, but because we learned that pain required action, silence implied indifference, and love meant fixing what was broken. But healing does not happen at the speed of the rescuer. It happens at the speed of the regulated body. And so the paradox reveals itself. The more urgently we try to help, the more we activate the very threat response we think we're soothing. The body does not calm when it is corrected. It calms when it is accompanied. The nervous system's question. In every moment of emotional overwhelm, the body is asking only 2 things. Am I alone? Am I in danger? If the answer to both feels like yes, panic rises. If the answer to the first shifts, no, someone is here with me, the second often dissolves on its own. That is the quiet power of holding space. Not erasing the storm, but reminding the body that it does not have to face it alone. Presence becomes regulation. Regulation becomes clarity. Clarity becomes choice. Healing is not the result of what we do for someone. It is often the result of what we do not take away from them. Their pace, their emotion, their dignity, their agency. The paradox of trust people do not trust those who always have answers. People trust those who allow them to still have questions. The more we rush to repair, the more we suggest that what they feel is too much, too loud, too inconvenient, too threatening to the room. And when someone feels like a burden, they stop sharing. The nervous system collapses inward, shame fills the space, and silence becomes a self-imposed exile. But when someone stays, not hovering, not instructing, not managing, just present, the body learns something revolutionary. I can be held without being handled. This is what turns a boundary into a bridge instead of a barrier. This is what transforms listening into refuge rather than surveillance. And this is what makes space healing, not hollow. Reflection whisper, ask yourself, what part of me still believes love is measured by how much I do, instead of how much I can stay? If this episode asked, can you stay regulated while someone else is in pain? The next asks, can you stay regulated while you are in pain and still speak in a voice that doesn't wound? Episode 17 explores the moment when language is hijacked by activation, where truth becomes a weapon, defense becomes instinct, and speech becomes a nervous system flare instead of communication. We'll map the physiology of reactive speech, how to interrupt the spiral, and how to turn intensity into clarity instead of damage. The space you hold is not measured by how much you speak, but by how little the other person has to protect themselves in your presence. Thank you for listening. Thank you for staying. Until next time, you've been listening to Mirror Talk, the language of the nervous system. I'm James Miller.